Good morning. This is the May 18th meeting of Borough Board. We're going to start out with a roll call. CB1.
CB1 is here. Thank you. It's Tammy Meltzer.
Hey, Tammy. CB2.
Here.
Thanks, Susan. CB3. I don't think I saw Tariq on just yet. CB4.
Good morning, Jeffrey LaPranza with Board 4.
Morning, Jeffrey. CB5.
Good morning, Vicky Barbero, CB5.
Welcome, Vicky. CB6.
Good morning, Kyle here.
Hi, Kyle. CB7.
Good morning, Beverly Donahue, CB7.
Morning, Beverly. CB8.
Russell Squire for CB8.
Welcome, Russell. CB9. I don't think I saw Barry yet. CB10.
Good morning, Marquise Harrison.
Good morning, Marquise. CB11.
CB11, Xavier Santiago. Good morning, everyone.
Great. Good morning. And I don't think I saw Kathy yet from CB12. We have a big agenda, so we're going to keep on moving through. Speaking of the agenda, do I have an adoption of the May 18th, 2023 Borough Board agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed or abstentions? The agenda is passed. Do I have approval of the April 20th, 2023 Borough Board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed or abstentions? The minutes are passed. The borough president is running around this morning, but I believe he's trying to get here. So I'm going to hold off on giving any kind of remarks there, but I will just take a moment to say off, kind of not on his behalf, but on my behalf, that I very much appreciate all of your patience and time. You all particularly know that our unit, CAU, has been working around the clock trying to get these appointments done. We were just able to do 99% of them yesterday, finally, and not without our fair share of scars and wounds along the way. But we're really excited about the cohort that you're going to get to your boards. I do promise you that I'm trying to, as soon as I get done with this meeting, I'm getting down to the office and we'll send you rosters so that you all have updated rosters. They'll be also uploaded on our website in the very near future. So we're, it'll take us a couple more days for us to make this cleaner and tidier and everything kind of set up in the way that we like. But I am very excited and am incredibly grateful for all of the time and input that you all gave us along the way. It's I hope that the folks that you see that in who we appointed, we really did try to meet a lot of the needs that you identified. So I'm very excited and thank you. On behalf of me and my unit, we really appreciate everything that you've given us. Okay, so we're going to move on there. And I'm sorry, Xavier, you had wanted to ask a question.
I did real quick, because typically when they get appointed, they become full board members right away, which means they're required for quorum and for voting at full board with action items. But the current members who are due to expire at the end of the month, that could potentially, and I have to just look at the roster, could push us over potentially 50 people. I just want to, when you go back, if we could just double check, so that way there's no confusion, because we have our full board next Tuesday, that would be helpful. So we make sure that we have the right people on the roster.
So I'm happy to give it to you today, but technically once we appoint people, then those board members, your board members are not those who are not being reappointed or who are off the board or are off the board. We the charter says that you serve at the pleasure of the borough president until we appoint somebody new, or up to 60 days past their expiration. We did it before the 60-day expiration. So at this point they shouldn't be board members anymore, but I'm happy. So, but
effective immediately, right?
With Correct. The caveat that on a couple boards, because of the timing, we took that into account, and when chairs have asked us for that. For instance, CB8 met last night. We appointed the same day. We talked to that chair who said, who we recognize that that's kind of crazy to expect that board members getting their appointment letters that day would be available and ready to do their thing. So we said effective, the next day or something like that. So if there's something that we need to talk about offline with CB11, I'm more than happy to do it. We want to make this as easy as possible for you.
Can you include CB1 in that conversation? Because I'm under the same,
Sure.
same. We have one meeting tonight, and then our full board meeting is Tuesday.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
I am concerned that the new people will not be able to come, so I may have quorum issues, topics getting, over the line.
Sure. Absolutely. Let's, I will circle back with you both before the end of the day today, just to talk it all the way through. And I will say, this is something that the BP may also add, but just like last year, we are also going to do our own onboarding sessions. They're not going to be until the first 2 weeks of June. And I'm more than happy to receive any sort of recommendations that you'd like us to cover. We did this last year for the first year, where we thought that it would be good to take about an hour or so to go over and hammer home the importance of attendance, and hammer home and talk a little bit more about open meetings law, talk a little bit more about their expectations for COIP and other things like that. We did a couple, kind of think of it as like a crash course on tips that you need to know when you walk into a community board meeting. And we thought that it was really helpful. It doesn't take the place of anything that you may want to do on your own boards, but we thought that coming from our office, it may put a little extra weight on things like attendance and things like that. So if there's anything that you would like me to include in that, this really is meant to support you. So just let me know what else we can add, and I'm more than happy to add it to our kind of crash course that we do. I'm always happy to talk more about this, but I also see that we've been joined by a couple of council members. So I want to thank them for joining us and see if they would like to give us brief remarks and updates. I see Councilmember Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much. I'm in a taxi as usual, so I hope I don't lose you. On terms of legislation, there's a couple of things. One, we hope that the bill that says 311 should be a category for smoke shops, related to smoke shops, because right now, if you call 311, you are told to email the state office of cannabis management. Nobody's going to do that. So we're doing that. I think that's going to pass. We also have a bill, which I've been working on for years. It's very small, but it says that this is also going to pass. It says that all co-signings on street signs will be on a website. So people will know who it is who's on that street sign. I've been trying to do that for years. We are also going to have a hearing on plaques. I've always been a proponent, these are small things, on the ability to put historical and cultural markers on buildings. Again, it all has to be worked out, but it's something that I feel very positive about. Just also on a campaign, as you know, there's a lot of temporary scheduling for shifts. And also, but unfortunately, people don't know that. So they don't know that they have the right to not accept a shift that is not given to them in a certain time period. And the same thing with paid sick days. People don't even know it exists. I can't tell you how many people do not know it exists. So anyway, there's a bill that's going to pass that talks about campaign on both of those topics. And also on the, believe it or not, I have a lot of friends who have babies. They call, they get to the hospital, the sick kid gets sick, the ambulance shows up, and there isn't the hospital that has pediatric services emergency available, and they take them to a hospital that is not appropriate. Believe it or not, that happens. So having a list so that people know what that is. I was pleased yesterday when we had the fire department commissioner, because we're doing budget hearings, as you know. I asked her about the bill that we passed that says you cannot sell what I call tampered secondhand batteries. And she said it's been very helpful, because even though they're all over the place, God knows there's been more fires this year than last year at this time. But at least it gives them the tool to get rid of them in the stores or elsewhere. And the feds are working on getting them offline. We still have a long way to go, but just so you know, that's helpful. In the Oversight and Investigations Committee, obviously we did something on family court. We're now working on the transportation of folks from Rikers who are going to court. They don't get there on time. There's a lot of issues. Staff has actually been investigating by going in the van itself to see what the problems are. And then we're going to have something on the, believe it or not, when that NYPD Erie Basin Storage Facility fire took place. Oh my goodness, a whole lot of evidence went with it. So what's the impact? I do want to say something really, two special events that we've been working on. One is a farm stand for young people. So there's a farm stand now that's going to be available at least 4 times in the next month, and maybe even more often, at the community garden run by the Green Careers High School on 84th and Amsterdam. They built a farm stand. I couldn't believe how nice it was. Grow NYC is providing the food. The nearby restaurant, Pickles, is paying for it, and people are buying it. We had something like 40 strollers lined up to buy the food the other day. They have chickens, they have bees, and then they have fish in the pond. So and the students are obviously learning how to be entrepreneurs, which is the whole purpose of it, and they're getting paid to do so. We're also doing, Love Your Street Day, pop up an oath at the district office, an older adult tech clinic at Lincoln Center. And of course, in July, we will start our fresh food for seniors, which is extremely popular. We have about 5 hotels. And on Mother's Day, we had collected Mother's Day packages. So for every mother in all the hotels, we gave out Mother's Day packages. It was very heartwarming, but we also ran into a whole bunch of problems, not worth discussing right now, but a whole bunch of them, as you can imagine. We're working on task forces with the community board and others, obviously on e-mobility, traffic safety. We'll start with doing something in Board 7, but it's the same problem everywhere. I don't need to explain it to you. We need to do more on congestion pricing on the west side. People are really freaking out, as you have in other community boards like 8. And then siren noise. I mentioned it yesterday at the hearing with the fire commissioner. I didn't get very far. And I've also met with the union. I didn't get very far. We have bills. Carlina Rivera has bills. We've got to do something. And then just finally, we're still working with trying to make sure that West Park Church, Presbyterian Church, does not get torn down. Looks like it might be a June hearing. A huge amount of work has gone in to save it. And we met with DOT to walk around Waterline Square. I have to give Department of Health credit because we are doing rat walks with the new rat czar. And we are working with OCM, which is the Office of Cannabis Management. We have met with them to listen to the new ideas for their enforcement. We shall see if it works. I still have 63 smoke shops in my district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Borough.
Hey Trisha, thanks so much for having me, and to the Borough President. I want to make a brief update on some of the bills we're working on. We passed a bill last week that would ban discrimination on height and weight. We heard from the administration last night. There's going to be a bill signing next Friday. We're excited for that. There's also, the fight with respect to the right to counsel. It's still a fight we are in. The budget negotiating team is working on this. We're millions of dollars short of what we need right now, and so we're going to be keeping pressure on the administration there to pony up. We're working on an op-ed with Shekhar Krishnan. There's also some conversations we've had with the Speaker's office to keep the pressure on. In the budget response, we had about $200 million that would go for fair funding of nonprofits, as well as for right to counsel. With the state coming through with tens of millions of dollars for public defenders, we hope that we can repurpose the $200 million now to increase funding for right to counsel. We recently announced with Commissioner Tisch a pilot containerization program that would come to Community Board 9. They would go to every single school in Community Board 9 would have a containerization program outside of their school, including 10 residential blocks. We're having a meeting with Commissioner Tisch and Community Board 9 next month that we're excited to do in partnership with them. Just to make sure that folks know where they're going to be going, and so the community has a say on the placements of these things. With respect to derelict vehicles, we introduced a bill that would require registered vehicles and unregistered vehicles to be towed within 72 hours upon an agency's knowledge. I know this is going to be very contentious. We're getting a lot of complaints in our office about derelict vehicles. We're trying to figure out what the best way is of accomplishing that. Our bill that we did that Mark Levine gave us regarding an accelerator program for local law 11, which would hopefully help. My apologies, I lost my train of thought. We're working on an accelerator program similar to local law 11 that would help buildings get into compliance with scaffolding requirements. And so there's a bill that we're working on right now that should be introduced at the next stated at the Borough President's request. We're very excited to be working with you on this. Thank you so much, Tricia, and to the community boards and to the Borough President's office.
Great, thanks, Councilmember. Unless I see any other elected officials, I think that we should continue on. So next, I'd like to welcome the Mayor's Office of the Community Affairs Unit, Robin Forst. Last month, CB4 had reached out to us asking us to invite the the Community Affairs Unit to talk about a neighborhood program, local law 102. Is that it, Robin?
That's correct.
If I remember correctly.
Yep.
So we reached out, and thank you again for Robin for being so responsive and for being here. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tricia. And of course, thanks to the Manhattan Borough President's Office, hello to Council Member Brewer and Council Member Brew. We, under local law 102, which created the concept or the origin of neighborhood support teams that were developed to address quality of life issues within geographical areas. Our agency, the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, was designated as the coordinating agency under the law to try to work with neighborhoods to identify priorities related to quality of life. And we have reached out throughout the city to community boards and bids, some elected officials, community groups. And I wanted, we're also reaching out to, we're attending borough board meetings just to spread the word there. Ray Carrero is our Director of Quality of Life for the Community Affairs Unit. And he will tell you a little bit more about the program, how to apply, and he will take some questions. Tricia, I know you have a very busy agenda, so we will be as brief as possible. And if we go too long, please just let us know. So with that, I want to introduce my colleague, Ray Carrero.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about the neighborhood support team. As Robin stated, local law 102 of 2016 was adopted by the City Council and gave us this opportunity to develop initiatives that will address quality of life issues within a geographic boundary. The geographic boundary would be the boundaries of a community board. The projects are going to use multi-agency initiatives like task forces of old, and we're going to look at a community addressing or using a broken window theory, where we come into a community depending on the request for interest that is submitted by either a community board, council people, civic groups, nonprofits. What I would like because there's going to be a lot of questions. If you go to the Community Affairs Unit's website, at the top banner, you'll be able to see support teams. Once you go into support teams, it'll give you a full description of the programs and the type of projects that we're looking for in order to do. There's also a link there for the RFEI, where people can, community groups can submit. It's kind of like an RFP. Your agency is identified. Your agency is telling us within your neighborhood, these are the issues that we have, kind of like a laundry list. And then if you have articles, you have pictures that you want to attach, we're trying to solicit community response because this will be a community-driven project. All of the community boards are being asked to participate, to reach out to their bids, to their CBOs, to their block associations. The projects cannot be smaller than 3 blocks. And the project should be multifaceted, meaning we're not complaining about one pothole. We're complaining about a series of potholes along a strip. We're not talking about one graffiti location. We're talking about a commercial strip or a geographic area that is covered with the vandalism of the graffiti, homeless encampments, illegal dump outs, abusive dining sheds. Depending on what the community feels within your district that you feel is a quality of life or is affecting negatively on the quality of life of the people that you're serving, those should go in. It is competitive. We are mandated by the law to do a minimum of 3 community districts per borough, and that will give us about 15 projects to do, and we will be committing these resources for a year in order to look at the problems. Some of the problems, as we all know, are very easy, or maybe we can figure out how to address them quickly, and some are long term. You should know I was hired specifically for this during the Bloomberg administration. I co-chaired the rodent task force. I led the graffiti task force, the homeless task force, illegal dumping, and so on. Some of you may already know me from my past work, but I do have 21 years of working for the mayor's office on various projects, successfully going through and addressing these issues. And so I'm looking for the challenge. I'm looking for the projects that have been stubborn, that have been chronic, that haven't been able to move, maybe a different approach. All of these things that we're going to do is going to be a joint effort between community and city agencies to develop a partnership like we used to do with the task forces going out and looking at the issues. Again, I'm going to stress we need I want the input from the people in the community. I want them to tell us where your problems are. I don't want to imagine what I think or I perceive your issues are. When it comes from you, then there is a buy-in, or from the civics and so on, that we can work together, because this is an issue that is passionate with you, and we're going to try to figure out how, with the resources that we have, also keeping in mind that there are budget constraints, and this issue that we're dealing with the migrants is putting a very big strain. So there has to be attempts to be creative to address some of these issues. That said, I know we're going to have 15 minutes. I want to leave some time for questioning if anyone has any.
Ray, it appears that so far there are 3 hands raised. The first one raised was Tammy Meltzer, who chairs my local community board. Tammy?
Hi, thank you very much for presenting. This is great. It's kind of interesting because I think this is the first presentation, Ray, I've ever heard on this. So I'm excited and delighted that you're coming out into the community boards like this. I will just, on a positive assumption, assume that you've been in the other boroughs rolling it out, that may have less, as Robin calls it, vocal community boards perhaps, but still have many issues of need. Is this something that is presented at each community board so constituents can come and hear, whether it's at a full board meeting or at a quality of life meeting or whatever committee each board has? So the word and the forms and everything are large distributed more broadly.
Yeah, I'm open to any invitations that you may have. I should have ended my presentation with telling you that the deadline for submission of the RFEIs is May 31st. And we will be selecting
This year.
this year. Unfortunately, we had a late start on it. We're rolling it out as quickly as possible. I have made presentations similar to this in the other boroughs. I've had interesting conversations and discussions on the projects and the type of projects that people want to do. But it is the 31st, and I will make myself available if you have a community board or group that you want me to make a presentation to.
Tammy, if I could just add on to that, we had reached out several weeks ago to community boards, basically to district managers about the program. And I thought it would be helpful to go to the borough board meetings, and Tricia and I talked, and this was the date that was available for us to come. So it's a little tight time-wise.
Yep.
But Ray is available, and maybe if you have a one-on-one conversation with him, he'll be able to, help direct you as to how to approach this in the timeline. Barry Weinberg.
I'm just going to close by saying, Ray, we have a full board meeting on the 23rd, and I would love a presentation on that evening, and I'd be happy to make you a featured speaker before our as part of our public hearing, as the case may be, because it's a vital service that you're about to offer. And even though the outreach to district managers is amazing, the people who are most likely to file the largest bulk, whether in detail or not, might be the board members. And I'm sad that they know nothing about this potentially in many districts.
And just to make it easier for you, Ray, I'll be at that meeting on Tuesday night, so we can go together. Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Tammy. Let's move on because I know Tricia is pressed for time. Barry?
Yep, just really quickly, a clarifying question. You kind of framed this as a broken windows approach. This is a multiple interagency approach and is mostly focused on quality of life as opposed to criminal matters. Okay.
Not technically. If the criminal matter is drug dealing, then yes, it will be an issue that we would address.
Yep, but it would include things like the traffic enforcement folks at NYPD. So if you have, as the council member Bray was saying, derelict and abandoned vehicles, that's something that this would address.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry. Beverly?
Yeah, I had been interested in the deadline issues too. It's very, very tight, and I'm not sure that it allows us to fully address our broader community concerns other than those that we know about already, and those we could certainly pull together. But I did want to ask about the extent to which issues that involve the state are appropriate for this program, in that many of the things that are quality of life have both state and city level regulatory concerns, and wondered what your office would in fact do about that overlap.
Well, that depends on the state issue. I also have a history of working with the state DOT and other agencies to address concerns. So that I wouldn't consider that an issue. I would consider this whatever state agency a partner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. And Susan Kent, Board 2.
I was just hoping that you could provide us with your direct contact information. My board meeting is tonight.
Oh.
I don't know if it's possible to get somebody to present tonight. That would be wonderful, so that we can, because this is not on anybody's radar. I just found out about it incidentally and, like 2 days ago. So if it was some way to jumpstart this, so maybe we can participate effectively.
Yes, you should be aware the application process has been simplified, so it'll be easy to submit. You could even, it doesn't have to be overly wordy. It could be bullet points, like a laundry list. These are the issues that we have, and these are the issues that we want to address. Creating the strategy is my job, to work with the community also and bring you in as a partner.
Thank you.
Ray and Robin, could you just please in the chat put down your contact information so that the boards can follow up with you directly?
Sure.
Oh, I just see
I'm doing that
Xavier
right
asked the
now.
same thing.
Tricia, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you. Okay, I think that we're going to move on unless Councilwoman Carmen De La Rosa is here. But I think that that's Kiana who's from her staff, and welcome Kiana. But I think we'll move on to our next speaker. We've got two topics for you guys today. And I want to pass it over to our Deputy Borough President, Keisha Sutton-James, who's really been leading all of the efforts around cannabis licensing throughout the borough. Go ahead, Keisha.
Thanks, Trisha, and good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I just wanted to, we are fortunate enough this morning to be joined by our colleagues in the Office of Cannabis Management. We have heard loud and clear, we all live here, so we experience firsthand the issues around illicit cannabis shops, and the issues around enforcement that have been plaguing us because, of course, as we all know, the Sheriff's Department, which was the only agency that was authorized to do enforcement around cannabis, was just simply not enough. It was too small, not enough staff, et cetera, not enough resources to be able to handle the enforcement in terms of the all of the pop-up illicit shops. And so OCM heard that very, loud and clear as well, and worked furiously in the budgetary process to bring forth new changes around enforcement. And so to share what those changes are, I am here to introduce Pascal Bernard. And Pascal, I've got to find your title. I just realized I don't have your title to handy. Who's with Intergov with OCM.
Is it your number 788?
Robin.
Title is resident of Harlem.
What? Say that again, Pascal.
I said my most important title is resident of Harlem.
There you go. But she also is a senior member of their Intergov team. Philip Rumsey, manager of Intergov Outreach, and Adam Stoyanovsky, who's the program specialist. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. I'm tossing it over to you now. Sorry, Adam.
Real quick, I can't share my screen, unfortunately. If I could be given that power, that would be great.
So thank you. My name is Pascal Bernard. As I said, I am a resident of the great borough of Manhattan and the great village of Harlem. So everything that's been talked about today so far, things that directly impact me. So very happy that we have an amazing borough president, and his team are equally amazing. And more importantly, that we have all of you working on behalf of us. So thank you so much for that. As the deputy borough president said, in the budget, there was an enforcement bill. And so the enforcement bill really, it empowers OCM to take enforcement actions against businesses selling cannabis without the required license, including so-called sticker shops and other similar unlicensed businesses selling cannabis. So I'm sure you've seen them in your communities, the vans, those kind of entities. It bolsters enforcement authority of OCM. It allows OCM to conduct regulatory inspections of all businesses selling and giving away cannabis, including selling and giving away cannabis in direct sales, and to inspect the businesses by using a court order if the business does not allow OCM to conduct an inspection. It empowers OCM to seize cannabis found in unlicensed cannabis businesses and to assess civil penalties both under the tax law and cannabis law against unlicensed cannabis businesses to eliminate the economic incentive to operate. The bill also empowers OCM to seek court-ordered injunctions, closing orders, the removal of commercial tenants to ensure unlicensed cannabis businesses cannot operate in violation of the state law, and to incentivize landlords to make sure that their tenants are acting in compliance with state law as well. It directs OCM to continue its work informing the public of risk of, patronizing these unlicensed businesses, and encourage consumers to instead go to the state licensed market. And we recently launched Why Buy Legal. And so that's part of the effort. And the reason that we're trying to get people to go to the state market is because these, the products are tested and it's regulated. And so it's safer for the general public. The law also establishes that selling cannabis and cannabis products without a license is a Class A misdemeanor. So it raises the stakes again for businesses who choose to operate illegally. It also empowers the Department of Tax and Finance to conduct regulatory inspections of businesses selling cannabis to determine if the appropriate taxes have been paid and to issue fines and penalties if they haven't. And it also establishes a new tax fraud crime for when cannabis businesses willfully fail to collect or remit required cannabis taxes, or knowingly poses sales of any cannabis, which taxes are required to pay but are not paid. And that one's important also, not just for the state, but as you know, the municipalities get a portion of the tax dollars. And so these are some of the things that, the new enforcement bill does. Prior to this, we did not have jurisdiction over unlicensed, stores. And that is similar to SLA. SLA can go in and do inspections over licensed, liquor sellers. And so that was similar. And as the deputy borough president said, we understand the frustration. We've heard it across the state, and we're very grateful to the governor, the state assembly, and the state senate for this. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Phil Rumsey. He's going to go through just a really quick slide deck with everybody, because I know what I said was a lot. And so we're making sure that everybody are able to get it. And additionally, we will then send the slide deck to the borough president's office so that they can send it to all of you. Phil?
All right, fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to bring up share my screen, bring up a PowerPoint here, and I will review a lot of what some of the material that Pascal just discussed here. So OCM's past enforcement activities, I'm sure most of you are aware of these. The MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, gave OCM power over licensed entities, as Pascal said. We have been working with local authorities to address the unlicensed cannabis issues the best we can. The efforts included identifying unlicensed operators, seizing cannabis, levying fines, store closures when we had the jurisdictional power to do so up to this point. So just want to review the overall new enforcement power that OCM now has. So the revisions to the cannabis law and tax law were included in this year's New York State budget, and I gave OCM some specific new powers over cannabis itself. So specifically, OCM can now take enforcement actions against business selling cannabis that do not have the license from us. As Pascal said, we were only allowed to only had jurisdiction over those licensed entities. We now have power over anyone selling cannabis, including the sticker shops that have been very prevalent throughout the city. It also bolsters the enforcement authority. OCM will be able to conduct regulatory inspections of all businesses selling or giving away cannabis, and it will allow for the inspection of these businesses using a court order in case the business does not allow OCM to inspect the facility. It also empowers OCM to seize cannabis found in unlicensed cannabis businesses, and we can assess civil penalties. This is including the tax and finance department at the state level and OCM fines against unlicensed businesses. Pascal mentioned this as well. It does establish selling cannabis products as a Class A misdemeanor. It does empower Department of Tax and Finance to conduct regulatory inspections of business selling cannabis and determining the amount of taxes that should have been paid and need to be paid, and establishes a new tax fraud crime when a cannabis business fails to collect or remit the required cannabis taxes. And again, this gives us another avenue against cannabis itself and licensed and unlicensed entities. So closure of illicit stores. OCM does have the authority to revoke, cancel, or suspend the license or permit issued under the cannabis law. So we can again take away their license. We now have the authority to conduct regulatory inspections during business hours of any business, a vehicle associated or connected with that business where it's suspected that there is engaging in activity that would need a license. And this includes everything from medical cannabis, adult use, cannabis product, cannabinoid hemp or CBD, hemp extract. Again, some of these don't have THC in them, but it's still the overall broad power that we now have. Any product marketed as one of these products will be considered those products by OCM and tax. So we will go on the assumption that what they're labeling and selling it as is the product itself. It also allows OCM to seek a court order injunction, closing orders, removal of commercial tenants that are not in compliant with state law. It will also incentivize landlords to make sure that their tenants are not are acting in compliance with the new cannabis law and within our powers. And if there is a commercial property owner that allows for the unlicensed cannabis to occur on their property, the Attorney General will be able to take action to require the landlord to remove the tenant. If the owner does fail to remove, there is the possibility that 3 times the amount of rent can be charged during this violation period. And the property owner can also be held liable for the cost of legal proceedings as well. Financial penalties. So this will add penalties for individuals who are cultivates the sale or sells cannabis. Again, any cannabis product, medical, recreational, or any product that is marked. Again, if they're selling it and marked in a packaging as THC or cannabis, if they do not have the proper license, we'll be able to go in and revoke different licenses. Violators would be subject to a penalty not more than $10,000 a day during the time that the violation is happening. And there are civil penalties of no more than 5 times the revenue from the prohibited sales. So we are looking at this very closely from a tax perspective, and some of the ways that we're enforcing them is through tax as well. Here's a quick little rundown of the different stages here. So an individual who's knowingly possesses cannabis for sale and has had the opportunity for a hearing, there are some specific fines. So more than 5 pounds, but less than 12. Civil penalty up to $25,000 for first violation, $50,000 for a second violation within 3 years. You can see more than 12 pounds of illicit cannabis, fines are going up to 75 for the civil penalty and $100,000 for the second. And over 5 pounds, we're now getting into the $50,000 range and $100,000 for repeated offense. The civil penalties, and we are wrapping things up. I know everyone's on a timeline here. We will have the authority to revoke, cancel, or suspend a license under the cannabis law for any violations within the cannabis law itself. OCM will have the ability to revoke sales tax certification of authority for individuals who are in possession of adult use cannabis and have not followed our outreach and flags that they shouldn't be involved with this behavior. New York State can revoke a registration for possession of illicit cannabis as well. So OCM reporting, I'll finish here with what we will be getting out there. Beginning January 1st of next year, every year following, OCM will need to submit a report to the state legislative branch. We will be posting this report on our website, so it's certainly going to be available to the public, and this is going to detail our efforts, what we've been doing, the details of the enforcement. And the report will include, all enforcement actions taken by OCM, Department of Tax and Finance throughout the year. I just want to remind everyone, we do have legal stores will have a rather large, I think it's 12, 13 inches tall, this sticker here on all the legal dispensaries that are opening up. And a reminder, we can, in order for us to move forward with a lot of this, we do need to be aware of the incident. And again, we have 2 ways, an email and a report. You can click on this link when we send you this PowerPoint slide and flag this for us. I do just want to finish here by saying this actions that we now have, the powers that we now have, we are still working through the details. We have OCM, we have Department of Tax and Finance, and we have the Attorney General's office involved in this effort. And we're currently creating emergency regulations that will hopefully be going out at the next board meeting, possibly, that's going to get the fine-tuned details that we currently don't have. So a lot of what I was talking about were actions against landlords, actions against individuals selling, specific fines, court orders. All the details of that are being worked on right now. We currently don't have the details of, we need to know about the store. We need to send cease and desist letters that we've been doing since 2022. And the details of how that's being passed on to the Attorney General's office and how we will be partnering with Tax and Finance, all of those details are being worked out now in the emergency regulation. So when it comes to the exact process, we're not going to be able to speak in great detail on that right now. But as soon as we're able, we will certainly be passing around more information and certainly getting the emergency regs out to everyone as well. With that, I will stop sharing and see if there are a few questions.
Thanks, Phil. There was a question in the chat. We will be sharing this with the Borough President's office so that they can send out to all of you to share with your boards regarding which agency was it? Worker protection. So currently we work in an interagency task force here in the city, and that includes, as the Deputy Borough President mentioned earlier, the New York City Sheriff's Department, as well as the NYPD, the DA, and DOHMH, and Department of Worker Protection. So depending on what the situation calls for, Department of Worker Protection may be brought in.
I think Tammy had put a couple additional questions in the chat. Tammy, I'm happy to read them, or if you'd like to reiterate them now, I want to give you the ability to do so.
I'll just jump in because DCWP or DWCP has already been working with community boards on information for illegal tobacco stores selling cannabis and other products. What beyond the worker protection aspects, they have been finding, collecting, and sending people to oath hearings. So it's important to me, obviously, and to those for the work that's already been done for it to not have to reinvent the wheel. And so my question is, how is OCM working with and obtaining the records that show what has already been done, so it's not like starting all over?
So any complaints of illicit sales come to us, and we work again in partnership with the city. So
Is that that's moving forward? What about?
No, even now, that's what I'm saying. Like, we've been doing that. We've been doing this all along. I know it may seem as if there's not been enforcement around this issue, but there have been. We've had enforcement actions with all the agencies that I named, the sheriff, the police, worker protection, DOH, MH. We've done actions on the Upper West Side. We've done them on the East Side. We've taken trucks in Harlem. So we've been doing actions all along. And so again, we get the complaints. We work in an interagency fashion and have been addressing this. So we have the information on illicit sales. We continue to gather that information. We continue to go after, these illicit sales.
So it sounds great. The 2024 deadline, or I don't know if it was a deadline or a launch that you have, that sort of blasted on the slides. Does that mean that the total control of the process moves over to you in January of 2024? And is there any difference in what's able to be done in the last 6 months of 2023, 7 months, versus the powers and what's vested under the emergency legislation for 24? That I did not understand. I apologize.
So the 2024 is about, it's a report. Phil, can you?
Yeah, we're required by the legislative branch to report out our activities on enforcement. That was in this recent passage from the budget. So the reference to 2024 is when the essentially when the report is due, around that time. So it's just a new requirement with the new powers we have. There's a requirement to kind of flush out the reporting and make sure that it's clear to the public what's going on. That's where the 2024 reference. And as far as starting, there are activities we can continue to do. Again, we do not have the granular details of how everything's going to be tied together and the legal proceedings that need to happen. We are not going out there and fining someone $10,000 a day after speaking with them one time or something like that. There will be very strict procedures in place to make sure that there are some general protections for individuals who, might not be engaged in this activity, maybe only accused of it. We will be able to continue these cease and desist letters, and those letters are important for a foundation of when we reached out to an individual or a company specifically and saying, look, we've made contact with them. Then we can start establishing that maybe they're ignoring us, maybe they're pushing back. So we are going to be able to proceed. We still have jurisdiction over, licensed entities, as we always have been. And we found that there are some licensed entities that are moved in the direction of some of selling things that they shouldn't be selling. So we're going to continue using all the tools we have been using for the past year, which a lot of nuisance and abatement laws, going after food trucks that aren't properly registered or to sell and are using it for cannabis sales. We're going to continue those activities and continue building the foundational case against different entities. And the minute we're able to move forward with these new powers, we will be. And I do think you'll see this, certainly by the end of the year, we'll have a clear impact on the illicit market.
And also, the report for 2024 doesn't mean that we're not gonna, as Phil said, continue to do all of these activities. Like, we're going to continue to go after the illicit shops simply because they put the public's health at risk, because we know that these products are not tested, they're not safe, they have lead, they have mold, and people should not be ingesting that. Additionally, these shops skirt tax laws, and that's also problematic. And the cease and desist letters are really important because, as Phil said, it is the foundation and all of this. And that's why it's really important to report all of this to us, because some of these people who are engaging in this illicit activity may want to get a license. And so the more information that we have when they come to us seeking a license, we'll have all of this, and that will be part of the consideration. And we, our executive director, Chris Alexander, our board chair, Tremaine Wright, have been really clear that if you're engaging in illicit activities, and you continue to engage in illicit activities, you run the risk of not getting a license.
I see Susan Kent and then Vicky Barbero.
Thank you. This is specifically a question. I know that about OCM's, the online verification of, I know your site has an online verification ability to determine whether or not an operation is actually licensed. And I was wondering how up to date that function is, because I was literally reading New York Magazine yesterday, and they had a whole big piece about this supposedly high-end shop that they were praising the design of, but when I went online, I couldn't find that they were licensed, and yet here they were being promoted in a major magazine. So I was wondering, is there some, what's the delay time in terms of the, updating of lists or of that, verifying, basically?
We update it regularly because we're the ones that license these businesses. If you remember what the shop was, because there are some illicit shops that are very high end.
Well, this place was called, this place was called, they literally called it drugstore. And the whole piece.
Yeah, so they're not licensed.
Yeah. Oh, they are?
No, they're not.
Oh, they're not, but they still were featured in this piece about their interior design.
So shame on the news, shame on the journalist that wrote the article, and shame on the publication for publishing it.
Okay. Thank you. That really takes a lot of audacity, I have to say.
Vicky?
Yes, good morning. CB5 had its first dispensary application, which we denied. And it's very troubling because we found that the applicant was extremely professional, very qualified, responsive to community requests, and the business operation was satisfactory and compliant with all OCM requirements, but we could not support the location of the premises. And as you know, the Dormitory Authority chooses the premises for the dispensaries, and they do so without taking any of our concerns into consideration. We had a task force that worked on this that came up with guidelines very similar to those, if not exactly the same as those with the Liquor Authority, the distance from schools, parks, places of worship, etc. It turned out that the location at 33 Union Square West is 75 feet from Union Square Park. Our acceptable distance is no less than 500 feet. Also, it was 175 feet away from a playground, which our guidelines are no less than 1,000 feet. and it was less than 500 feet from a harm reduction facility. The reason I'm bringing this up is two questions. Is there anything that can be done in terms of the applicant was extremely, we would have definitely approved this if it had not been at that location. Is there anything that can be done in terms of how those locations are chosen? And my second question is, how much emphasis and how much does our response to this count with OCM when you get a look at the application and the response from the community board, which was a very, very strong denial?
So we do consider the community board's advisory opinion. It is part of the record, and we let the licensees know that it is part of the record. And as it relates to sensitive use location, the MRTA defines what sensitive use locations are. You have to be 200 feet away from a house of worship, 500 feet away from a school. If it is, if the facility is multi-use, so if it is not exclusively a school, exclusively a house of worship, then it negates that, and that's similar to SLA.
Right.
Phil, I know you work on the subcommittee, so do you want to add anything else?
No, I mean, we're, again, as Pascal said, this is an advisory opinion. It's one element that's weighed by the Cannabis Control Board of whether or not to give final approval. And again, it's certainly taken into account. And as far as DASNY choosing the facilities, I mean, they've really been going over what Pascal said, the 200 from house of worship, 500 from a school, 1,000-foot radius around dispensaries. The state does supersede a lot of local zoning and other things in cannabis matters. And again, I will, it sounds like you sent in your strong no, and that will certainly be weighed as part of the process with the Cannabis Control Board.
Yes, we did send it in. And, I don't know if you look at the closeness to a park, but they did have chairs outside and were asked to remove them because people were buying and sitting in the chairs and enjoying. And the chairs are practically the same distance. I mean, you're only 75 feet from the park. It makes sense not to be near a park because you walk 75 feet, sit down on a park bench, and you're doing, everything that we're concerned about, as well as the playground for children. So I would really hope that OCM pays special attention to that particular problem when they get their responses from the community boards. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. I just want to say I generally try to keep the space for chairs, but I recognize that John Keller, who's a member of CB6, raised his hand, and I'm sorry, John, there was a glitch in our inability to get you to have the chat function enabled. So with that in mind, go ahead and please go ahead and feel free to ask your question.
Okay, Kyle's trained me to speak quickly, so I will. First of all, thank you for bringing me into the meeting. I'll be short. I'd also like to thank Phil Rumsey and his colleague Adam Sajanovich for attending one of my committee meetings, and it's very nice to meet Ms. Pascal Bernard as well. I have two concerns or two issues to put on your table. First of all, any reasonable person would understand that it's going to take a while for OCM to get your enforcement protocols in place, and we certainly do understand and appreciate that. Appreciate all the work you've been doing so far. The concern is, and my concern is that, at the community board level, that we have some sort of reporting as you develop these on the status. How many in CB6, for example, how many illicit shops have been identified? Where is each in your protocol for enforcement? How long does it take to go from identification to a fine, to the large fines that we have? I think that is the sort of thing that will get people engaged in this, because right now the illegal shops are about 1% of the market. And you don't need to be a great market strategist to understand that 1% market share is not a good spot to be in. So, and we understand how hard you all are working to make that happen. So that's the first point. Can we have reporting as part of your process to community boards on a, I would like it on a monthly basis. That might be unrealistic as to where shops are. Second point is I'd like to reiterate what Ms. Barbero just said. We see a lot of NIMBYism already in some of it legitimate, as it sounds like it is in the case that Ms. Barbero is describing, and some of it not. I'm a very strong supporter of legalization of marijuana and cannabis products. That have been, when your brother-in-law is Ethan Nadelman, the director of the Drug Policy Alliance for years, you don't have much choice. So I really want this to work, and I love MRTA, and I think the sooner we get reporting by community district, by community board, what's going on, how this is being enforced, I think the better off we'll all be, and I appreciate your forbearance with my comments.
Thank you so much for that feedback. We definitely will take it back to the office. I will say that we are a state agency, and we are responsible for the entire state. So we may not be able to do this just in full transparency. It may be that, you know, we have the annual report and that's it, but certainly we will take it back. I will say two things. You know, we do have our proposed regulations. We had one public comment period. We will be entering the second public comment period, which is 45 days. As soon as they are published by the Department of State, we'll definitely share with the Borough President's Office so that they can share it with you all. And we'll also send it to your district managers. So, you know, between those two emails, hopefully you will get it. And as Phil said, we do plan to do emergency regulations as it relates to the new enforcement. And so that will also provide an opportunity for you guys to share things like this in that format.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple things to keep in mind. OCM has also graciously agreed to come to our Borough Service Cabinet meeting tomorrow. So they'll be relaying the same information to your district managers, which I think can only be helpful in order to get them on board as well. As soon as we get a copy of their slides, I'm happy to send it around to everybody. I'm sure it's just at least worth mentioning out loud that I know that there are still a number of questions in terms of process and other things, other aspects of this new industry and coming online. So we are talking about how we can continue this conversation next month as well, and dial down a little bit deeper into the community board process and that sort of thing. So please know that this conversation isn't over, and if any of the chairs want to go into additional discussion about this today or next month, I'm more than happy to make sure that we have the space to do so. But I do want to thank OCM and especially Keisha Sutton James and Keisha Smith, who's on this call as well, who have been kind of leading these efforts to get information and education out there to folks. Thank you all for your time and for really focusing on this topic.
Thank you so much for your partnership. You guys, and I might be a little biased because again, I do live in Manhattan, but I think you guys have, one of the best teams across the state on this, working for you in the Borough President's Office. And they've been amazing partners. Anytime we need anything, they're there. And anytime they ask, we try to honor their requests. So we're very lucky in Manhattan. Before I jump off, Susan, I just have one quick question for you because now I'm going to, communicate to our press team. You said it was New Yorker Magazine?
New York Magazine.
New York
For
Magazine.
drug shop, the establishment's called Drug Shop. And that's why I couldn't believe that it was unlicensed. And yet it was being featured prominently in their column called Curbed, which deals with real estate.
And when did you see this? Was it like recently?
I think it's the current issue.
Okay. Thank you so much. I will get my press team on it. I appreciate it. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna continue on here, but I want to actually ask just because I am cognizant that that my colleagues may have to jump off this call too, and I know that chairs have to go soon. But Tommy Vest, who's our general counsel, and Chris Carroll, who's our director of policy, have been kind of closely monitoring open meetings law, and as well as kind of small changes to the, or clarifications, changes to the law as it has to do with people with disabilities, and just overall how long we anticipate any more extensions happening. So just because I want to make sure that they're here for this and can answer any questions that you guys have, I am going to ask Tommy to go into this small kind of update here and make sure that if anybody has any questions, we can answer them.
Hey everyone. So yes, with regard to everyone's favorite topic, open meetings law, there have been some updates that were passed in the state legislature this session. It relates to, and if anyone's interested, I can put in the reference here, but this is section 103A, which allows for, which is the video conferencing section of open meetings law. So this is in the general, the change happened in the general section. So I think most of the boards have been operating under the emergency provisions, because there is currently a state of emergency for COVID-19. And so that's kind of a different section of open meetings law that allows you to operate remotely. So once you are no longer operating remotely, or the COVID-19 emergency is lifted, you'll be obliged to comply with the general 103A provisions, which generally allow for, and I think, apologies if this is very basic, but I'm just going to start at the beginning. So I think most of you are aware of this because you had to pass rules that stated when someone would be allowed to participate remotely. And those rules were for exigent circumstances, so kind of one-off cases. Those people who are participating remotely in those instances, there was the kind of question about quorum. Well, so a new criteria has been added to allow someone to participate remotely and be counted towards quorum. And that is for instances where the individual has is a member who has a disability, as defined in section section 292 of the executive law. And the other criteria is that such disability renders the member unable to participate in person at any meeting where the public can attend. And then, once that is established, those two prongs, then that person would be able to be counted towards quorum. So I think it's exciting. It's moving in the right direction, recognizing that in-person attendance is not always possible, and this could, potentially facilitate more participation from members who have disabilities. So that's the update. I don't know, Chris, if you have more to add there.
No, nothing on that. So I'll let if there are any questions specific to the change in the law.
Kyle's got a question.
Yeah, not a question per se, but just a follow-up on previous work from this borough president, who obviously advocated for a virtual option going forward. I need to stress that this is something that is severely needed, at least by our board. As I mentioned in previous discussions, we've done surveys of the public and of our board, and it's overwhelmingly in favor of a virtual option for many reasons. The flexibility that it offers, but also the access and transparency and ability to engage and participate. There will be a severe crisis with the board membership if this option gets removed. I've been told by many that they would drop off the board, that they would not participate with the board, and so on and so forth. And I know there's been a lot of initiatives in terms of diversifying the boards, not just in terms of age or racial identity or sexual identity, things like that, but also geographic location and different walks of life, whether it be professions. If we go back to what we had before, there's going to be severe consequences to that. So I would just continue to urge everybody to make it an option. That doesn't mean that you have to remain virtual, but it means that boards who do self-determine that they would like to remain in some hybrid or completely virtual option, that it's not illegal. So just continue to appreciate the efforts of fellow chairs and the borough president's office as well. I know has been working on this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that hybrid options will be the case at least through 2024. So it's for the public, I'll say. So boards can continue to offer a remote option for public attendance. It really is once the emergency order is lifted, that's when the only way that members can participate is participate remotely is if they meet the kind of exigent circumstances that are outlined in the law. But hybrid will still be an option going forward, even outside of the.
Yeah, I meant more so for like the board membership itself, which is my concern.
Absolutely.
And just to underscore that point, Kyle, the current law expires or sunsets next summer, I think June 24. So we have a ton of work we have to do. We've been talking to the Assembly already. We've been talking to the Senate already. We are working on both what it means to extend what we have now and make it better. So it's definitely going to be a thing. We'll need everyone here to be voicing their opinion, be checking in. Certainly for the next session, for sure, can have to be a priority for us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
your point.
what we can be, please let us know, because we actually were the first public body, if everyone recalls, from June 2021, the first public body in the state to actually advocate for that option when it was sunsetted back then. So however we can be of help, please let us know.
I see, I think Susan was next and then Tammy, sorry, Tammy. Tammy first and then Susan.
I just wanted to check because I think I'm a little bit confused about when the orders are in and when they're not. He just said June 2024. My understanding is that we are under a temporary emergency order and that's ostensibly what allows, for example, the open restaurant program to be continuing and us to be continuing the meetings in either a virtual or hybrid fashion.
Right. Forgive me, I'll clarify really quick. The change to open meetings law that has allowed us to do this interim version, this hybrid version, is a law that sunsets June 2024. And so we go back to the old version, pre-pandemic version, where there is no option unless the law is extended. That's the part that expires June 24, where we are right now in the emergency order phase that allows fully remote as long as there's an emergency. That's actually something that's allowed by that change in open meetings law in the previous budget. So we have to start thinking also about 2024, and that's the point, I think Kyle's making very clearly that we have to be really thinking about that as well. The update I wanted to actually give, and it was just sort of preparation for folks, is that we are hearing the city start to socialize that the emergency order is going to end relatively soon. I think the expectation for us is that we'll be remaining in a emergency order through the majority of June, but that it wouldn't be extended beyond that. That can change. There is no final decision. I want to be very clear that we don't know anything yet, but we have heard from now multiple groups, whether they be boards or panels or other entities, that the city started socializing this. So just wanted to flag for everyone to prepare that, the fully remote version may be less possible moving forward.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you very much. The one thing, we're fully in support of all of the virtual participation. We actually roll our full board meeting in hybrid. And I will say, and perhaps this is post-pandemic issues, that there's a quorum of people. You must have a quorum of people in the room to operate a meeting. And that's not as easy as you would think it is. There are, for anybody who's joined us on our full board meeting, I'm literally cheering. We do rounds of applause for the last 4 people who walk into the room to make us to have quorum for a full board meeting. I don't ever really remember that an issue before. I don't know if during the intake process that we could make sure that people understand what those rules and regs are, that with the expectation of you need to come in when you. So it's a challenge. It's one that we rise to. It's one that we are successing on. But I will say it takes a village.
Yeah, totally. And the change from this budget in open meetings law that allows for someone who has a disability, that person, even if they're not in the room, would still count towards quorum. So hopefully that is a little bit of help there. And Tommy, correct me if I'm getting any of that wrong, but we recognize, we totally agree with you. That's why we've been trying to fix this for the last year and honestly struggling to get any traction, but still working on it.
Yeah, I will just add in terms of the timing. So Chris mentioned that, this it's referred to as section 103A of the open meetings law, and that's the provision that allows for video conferencing by public bodies. That expires and is considered repealed July 1st, 2024. But also January 1st, 2024 is when the Committee on Open Government is supposed to be producing a report on the kind of the use of video conferencing and making recommendations. And I think what we've heard is that, the legislature is hesitant to make large legislative changes until they see that report from the Committee on Open Government. I don't know the extent to which they are doing outreach, but if that's something that maybe we could be reaching out to inform them, of the challenges that we've seen or the challenges that we may see if video conferencing is removed of an option. But I do think there's like a two-prong approach here. So to kind of get to Tammy's point, we also need to be telling our membership putting forward the message that in person is going to be an expectation, and it may not be it may not be completely pre-pandemic expectation where like physically every single person has to be present, but I think there's strong sentiment that some physical participation is going to be necessary kind of across the board, unless you have a disability, unless there's like a reason not to. And I don't know if that, to what extent that's really going to change even after 2024. So I think it's kind of like we need to move the needle on the legislative side, but we also need to move the needle in terms of getting people back to this idea that physical participation is actually a requirement of your membership on the board, barring exigent circumstances. So those are my additional thoughts there.
Go ahead, Susan and Beverly.
Thank you. In addition to supporting what my fellow chairs are saying about the importance of the virtual component, I want to point out that for us, at least, hybrid, at least for our full board meetings, is not a realistic option even, because we don't have guaranteed access to a space of appropriate size and accessibility in a guaranteed way. We're always moving around from place to place. We don't have the resources to purchase the equipment and then the support to, adequately provide the technology that makes our meetings legitimate under the law. And we're being held to a standard that is the same for, governmental bodies that have dedicated spaces that have technology. And the idea that we're being lumped into this, and we are large, not just 50 people, but we get dozens of participants, every month. And we're going to be forcing people into situations where we're really going to be hurting for community involvement. Even I'm not so much concerned about making the quorum as I am about depriving the community of access, because we will not be able to offer them the option of participating the way they've become used to it. So I just want to put that out there. I see people are probably sharing that similar concern. But there has to be an acknowledgement that we need assistance in terms of the technology components that we can, because we don't have a guaranteed location, something that we can take with us and utilize to provide this hybrid and the access that comes with it.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. There are two parts there, you know, the technology and the resources to make sure you can support your work. We've been talking to City Hall directly about adequately funding community boards for this exact thing in the budget. You know, it's been part of all of our public testimony. It's been part of our conversations directly with the city. I would definitely encourage you all to be saying the same thing to your council members. I think it's definitely that time of year. So your point's well taken there. And your point about space is real. It's a post-pandemic world. Space is a different question than it was pre-pandemic. And so we've been talking to the law department as well as to the state about why that's more complicated than most folks might realize, particularly for a body that is a community board. It isn't quite as you know, thought of or immediately the way, say, you know, some other policymaking panel or board might be. So there are definitely special considerations here that we've been trying to make sure that people are aware of. Still working on it. Your point's well taken, I assure you. And Beverly?
Just Tommy, could you possibly share a link to the section of the administrative law that talks to the list of potential handicaps that would qualify for this new special provision that was passed in the last session? That would be very helpful, because we do have certain members that I think would qualify, but need to be sure.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, unless there are any other questions or discussion on this, we will keep you posted. And thanks to Tommy and Chris for being available and taking time to talk about this a little bit more. Moving on, I think we should jump into chair reports. It's May, so we're going to start with CB5.
That's us. Thank you, Tricia. First of all, the first thing I want to do is thank the borough president, Tricia, and staff for our new appointees. We have 11, it's a lot. I really haven't had a chance, I don't think any of us have, to dive into the applications yet, but it's going to be a very busy weekend, obviously. If I could, I did have down as one of my 3 issues to report the dispensary application, and if that could be included as part of my report, that we had our first, that the applicant was extremely professional. We still found a problem with the location due to its proximity to the park, to the playground, and to the harm reduction facility on 15th Street. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that this month, our Landmarks Committee objected to the proposed amendments to LPC's existing rules. First and foremost, the new rules, if they were adopted as introduced, would deprive the public of the opportunity to be informed and to comment on certain projects. The Commission's proposed changes would significantly reduce the amount of notice given to the public and eliminate the opportunity to comment. Secondly, the proposed rules may be too lenient or too loosely defined. Under the guidelines, there will be a relaxed standard for historic buildings that may result in unseemly alterations. We're very concerned about that. And lastly, the proposed rules will subject the Commission's staff to too much pressure in making their determinations. The staff has no discretion, and any project that has been deemed acceptable for review at the staff level would eventually be approved. We sent a letter to LPC, which can be found on our website. Lastly, as some of you know, CB5, along with boards 2 and 4, hosted a very successful joint meeting supported by boards 1, 3, and 6 to discuss severe mental illness. The meeting was attended by 4 mental health experts who work with those who struggle with serious or severe and persistent mental illness. We were so pleased that 5 of our electeds were in attendance: Eric Botcher, Carlina Rivera, Brad Hoylman Siegel, Tony Simone, and Linda Rosenthal. Our resolution came out of that, that joint meeting. And we commended the mayor for committing to expand the number of supportive housing units and hospital beds for individuals living with SMI, as well as the council for its attention to SMI. We urged continued expansion of ACT and IMT, and we urged New York State and New York City to offer competitive salaries and to consider regulatory changes to really better leverage the supply of mental health professionals. We also urged the Department of DHMH to create a clearer process, access to the network of services. And lastly, we urged the city to leverage our existing infrastructure to increase the number of hotel rooms and respite beds available on a short timeline, while the permanent housing that has been promised is brought online. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vicki. I think Tammy had asked just in the chat. Sorry, it looks like my internet is a little unstable, so I'm going to go off a video. Tammy had asked if you could just share the notes that you had about, I think, LPC's new proposed rules. I think that was what Tammy was referring to, but Tammy, if I'm wrong. And also if you can share your the reso that you passed, I'm happy to share both of those with the other chairs. Is there any other questions for Tammy on this? Okay, next we're going to go to, Kyle had to jump off, but he just wanted to make a mention that they too had which he said they discussed, but they also, just like we knew last month, had their first cannabis application come before their board as well. We're going to go next to CB7.
Hello. Also thank the borough president and all of your staff for our bumper crop of 9 new members, which is much more than we've had in recent years. So we really need them and look forward to getting to know them. This month we celebrated the opening of the Gilder Center at the American Museum of Natural History, and I encourage you all to visit. It is a fabulous, fabulous facility. And many of our members went to an early opening event there and found it to be fabulous. We finally passed a resolution supporting the safe haven on 83rd Street after several months of conversation on the subject. And in our last hearing, there were more support testimony than testimony against. We passed a resolution on obscured license plates, which are hitting the revenues of the MTA very badly. We also passed a resolution opposing the 2-story dock house on the 79th Street Marina and supported FEMA's findings of adverse effects on a historical property. At committee level, we just last night passed a resolution on the City of Yes zoning text changes supporting carbon neutrality, and that will be heard at our June full board. We're holding, before we break for the summer, 2 separate meetings on 5G towers, one on siting necessity and aesthetics, the second on health issues. We felt it was important to separate those 2 topics so we could have experts on different issues at different meetings. We've started work informally on congestion pricing mitigation needs for the district. And this month, our Health and Human Services committee will be meeting next week on dementia issues. We're planning a wonderful celebration for our whole board at the American Museum of Natural History in June. That's it.
Beverly, just before you go on, first of all, I agree. I have not been to the Gilder Center yet, but it looks amazing, and I'm so jealous if you've already been there. I also just want to say thank you for passing your reso on carbon neutrality, and this is a good time as any, just to remind you all that this is going to come before Borough Board in June. So please have your discussions. I see Lizette Chaparro is on our call right now. She's our land use director. If you have any questions about it, I'm sure we can try to get them answered for you, but please make sure that you bring this before your community boards so that we can have a informed discussion and take up this resolution in June. So thank you, CB7, for doing that. Unless there's any questions for Beverly, we'll move on to CB8.
Thank you. So first of all, we're very excited to welcome our new members, and thank you, Tricia, for accommodating us on the timing, as you mentioned earlier. But so today is officially their first day, so we're excited to get them set up and ready to go. We had our full board meeting yesterday, and so passed a number of resolutions, and there are just a few that I want to highlight. So one of them has to do with scaffolding, which I know is a big issue throughout the city, and it's something that the borough president has really been leading on, as well as one of our council members, Keith Powers. So we passed a resolution in support of 9 city council bills that are pending that have a lot of common sense solutions to try and cut down on the amount of scaffolding that is there, and cut down on the time that the scaffolding stays up, and hopefully reduce the need for scaffolding and make it more appealing when it does need to be up. So a lot of different initiatives there, and we passed a resolution in support of all of them. So hopefully those move forward. We also passed a resolution in support of the borough president's proposal for a waterfront agency to uniformly handle all the waterfront issues that we have in the city and concentrate that. We also passed a resolution advocating more funding for trees, and this is all in connection with the Million Trees Initiative, but specifically we are advocating for 1% of the budget to be spent on trees, and making sure that we're getting more trees planted here, and also more money in the NYCHA budget to have more trees planted on NYCHA campuses. We did deal with a 5G siting application last night that was related to trying to put a 5G on a street lamp. But on the sort of larger issue of the 5G towers, that seems to be on hold for now. So it seems like our advocacy there on getting those large sort of unsightly towers was successful. And I want to thank in particular our Congressman Jerry Nadler for, I think, playing a large role in that. And the last thing is we have another CB8 art show coming up on June 17th. So, and that's going to be in James Cagney Place, which is 91st Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. So I just want to let everybody know that everyone's welcome to attend. These have been a lot of fun in the past. We've incorporated musical performances into them. So that's Saturday, starting at 11 a.m. And if anybody would like to display their art, we're still accepting submissions from artists, and the artists can display their art. People have also been selling art. So anybody who's interested in being part of the art show that way, you have until May 26th to still submit art. So we would love to have folks from all over the borough. So if you have folks that you know of in your districts, please spread the word about that also. And that's it from my report.
Thanks, Russell. I know we've talked about this before, but it is a really lovely event. And if you do know of any artists or anybody who, if any of the boards are, I know you guys are a friendly bunch who likes to travel around to the borough to different areas. It's really, as long as it's a nice day, which I'm sure it will be, it's a really beautiful park, beautiful play street, like lovely way to spend the afternoon. So I hope you would consider making your way up to the Upper East Side to.
That's the question.
I think I did. So fingers crossed, but it's lovely. I can't wait. It's a nice way to spend Father's Day.
It's with her paintings and past art shows.
Thank you. Okay, Barry's on a call, so he said that he's gonna hold off for a minute. Marquise had to jump as he's a teacher, and the students can't wait, which is fine. So we're gonna go next to Xavier.
Thanks, Trish, and everyone. Sorry, I'm just at BT. Trying to make this as brief as possible. Since our last Borough Board meeting, we had our second annual Earth Day conference. Really big success. Had Congressman Espiat, Senator Serrano come out. It was we had double the attendance from last year. So that's a sign that we're coming back. Let's see. Also, we had our UMass Thank You Breakfast from Connecting Businesses. UMass, for those in 9, 10, and 12 are familiar, Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. They've done a lot of great work with our small businesses, including providing grants and microloans. Just so many success stories. Let's see, the other thing that's going on is public safety is a big issue in CB11 right now, as I'm sure you've seen in the news. I attended the Washington Houses Tenant Association residents meeting. They are having a lot of issues with trespass, intimidation of their elderly, especially their Asian American community there. It's been something that's been very troubling for a while. And so we're working with those communities as well as PSA 5 to find tenable solutions. Also want to say thank you to those members of 9, 10, and 12 who showed up for the We Act for Environmental Justice. That was a really well attended. Thank you to our Borough President, Mark Levine, for showing up. It was great to put our heads together and think of ways we can improve the environment, not just from a sense of planting trees and air quality, but the surrounding environment that we walk through day in, day out. These are some of the challenges, as we alluded to during that meeting, what the long-term impacts were from Robert Moses, including the Cross Bronx, which came up. Let's see, the other issues that we're facing right now, we had Friends of La Marqueta. As many of you may remember, that our former Speaker of the City Council, Melissa Mark-Viverito, had allocated $25 million for improving La Marqueta. And simultaneously, we now, at this stage, many years later, we have the viaduct improvement project that's beginning this year. And we're trying to work with them to find ways that we can continue allocating those funds. We've come to some agreements and solutions of where we're going to locate a lot of the vendors and the incubator spaces there. And again, this is part of our historical district. I also want to say thank you to Porfirio and Keisha for coming out for the BP's tree giveaway at Urban Garden Center. That was a lot of fun there. And let's see, last bits. We have our executive committee meeting tonight. So be able to take a lot of this information. Thank you to Tommy and team for relaying the OML amendments. Very much appreciated. We will be having coming up in June, since I will not see you until after the fact. We'll have the Puerto Rican Day Parade and the 116th Street Festival. That'll be coming up in June. I think it's the second weekend. So please, if you can, come out, be supportive. I'm here, and I'm going to pass the baton to Russell to get the next chair get together, because we were pleased to host, but I'm just going to pass it because he's our neighbor to the south. So Russell Tagg, you're it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks, Xavier. And also, please let us know if any of your members are interested in marching in any of the parades coming up. I'm sure that our office will be doing that, and we love having marching with community boards. Next, we're going to go to Barry, CB10 or 9. Sorry, Barry.
Thank you. I'll take it. So we feel like we're under siege in CB9 with a lot of issues that are coming up. We've seen a spate of illegal construction, both in landmark districts and just in residential areas generally, violations of certificate of occupancy. And so, these are really serious issues affecting tenants that require a lot of follow-up. We're also seeing, unfortunately, as a result of some of those fires that have happened, landlords filing for substantial rehabilitation with the HCR, which allows them to remove the building from rent regulation after the tenants have departed. And so we're still trying to find both legislative solutions in Albany, but also work with the HCR to ensure that at a minimum, they check that the filings by the landlords are accurate and true, which does not happen currently, as far as I can tell. Very excited to hear about the neighborhood support teams. We will definitely bring it to the full board, as well as the new smoke shop and cannabis enforcement powers. I think we're going to be very happy. In that vein, we held an event on April 20th about cannabis outreach and trying to educate the public about legal cannabis. I know we did that in conjunction with the borough president's office and Councilmember Bray's office. It was a great success. Similarly, we held our senior resource fair on May 1st and had very good attendance from seniors in the neighborhood. A lot of our seniors are experiencing some kind of isolation or other effects from the pandemic, and this was very helpful. A big shout out to Aurelius Mejia, Walter Alexander, and Carlton Davis on our board, who did a lot of work to make that happen. The Morningside rezoning continues apace. I think DCP has finally engaged on it. And so, we're trying to continue to see that through at least the portions of it that are in our district. It's very important. It is largely an upzoning of soft sites in our area, but does provide some contextual rezoning on clusters of vulnerable rent regulated housing stock. We continue to fight about 1727 Amsterdam with the City and Health and Hospitals Corp. As a reminder, this is city-owned land that they are trying to give to Bowery Residence Committee, which is primarily a homeless shelter operator. They want to develop it as supportive housing. It's way much of an overconcentration of supportive housing and studio units. One supportive housing provider who's not involved with the project called it a psychiatric residential treatment facility masquerading as supportive housing. And they want to avoid ULURP. And you can't avoid ULURP when you're disposing of city land. I'm sorry. Sucks for them, but so we are continuing to fight that. We will definitely, we're also seeing a massive wave of derelict cars without plates being left parked in the neighborhood that are taking up parking spots and, attracting rodents and other nuisances. Would love to work with the mayor's office to get those processed. On Friday, we found out that the governor or that the state Office of Emergency Management was considering using Riverbank State Park's gymnasium and theater as a shelter. We joined them for that walkthrough several hours later, and we and Assemblymember Al Taylor and Cordell Clare made it very clear that this is not appropriate space for a shelter or HERC. Half the bathrooms are offline for reconstruction. It's on top of a sewage treatment plant. I mean, I don't know why this has to be explained to them, but we did, and we suggested that they look at SUNY dorms if they're really trying to find places for people in this summer. We are also experiencing rare spate of issues with our liquor licensees. We have one licensee on Broadway that is probably one of the worst in the city in terms of noise complaints. They're serving hard liquor when they only have a beer, wine, and cider license. The tenants have filed thousands of 311 complaints for excessive noise. They've defaulted on 3 oath hearings about their noise issues. So we're going to try to work proactively with the SLA to get them shut down. Tenant interim lease buildings are a huge issue uptown, and we are pushing the city to include 100 million capital financing. These are buildings owned by the city of New York that are residential buildings that are run by the tenants in the buildings for free, with the promise that they will convert to co-ops. And the city now wants to lard them up with massive amounts of debt that then the co-ops will be responsible to pay back. Several buildings are in default already after emerging from similar processes. And so we're pushing to just go move them through the TIL program, where the repairs are done by the city without debt, and then the buildings are made co-ops. And lastly, I want to welcome our new community board members, but I also want to call out something that's very disturbing to me as someone who's been on a board through 3 borough presidents, which is the borough president staff have done an amazing job in this application process. but both of our council members, Abreu and Richardson Jordan, have made some of the most political decisions about reappointments that I have ever seen or know about. You know, Council Member Richardson Jordan has declined to reappoint 4. All of her appointments were committee, chairs. She has declined to reappoint all of them without regard to the work that they do, the importance of the board, the perspectives and voices that they bring. And, Council Member Abreu has appointed, a child of a staffer and other paid campaign members to the board and thrown off some, our secretary at one point and other really important board members who show up, who do a lot of work, who bring voices that we need to the community board table. And I just want to, call this out because this is not the norm that has historically been what happens in Manhattan. This has happened a lot in other boroughs anecdotally, which is why certain other boroughs are considered to have the worst community boards in the city. And so I do not want to see us go down that path. And I really think our council members need to understand the norms around, reappointing people who don't have attendance issues, who do a lot of hard work, who are not disruptive, and who keep our boards functioning. I also want to thank Councilmember Abreu for his efforts in the containerization of waste stuff. We look forward to working with him and Commissioner Tisch and the staff at sanitation to find the best locations for those containers, but we're very excited to be one of the test sites for that. And I will conclude my chair's report there.
Thanks, Barry. I gotta say something just because about appointments here. In general, it's not our practice to talk in detail about the appointment process for a lot of reasons. I think to the best of our ability, we try to appoint people within our charter mandated rules and and restrictions and that sort of stuff that are good members. I do feel strongly about the cohort entirely that we put together. I think that, again, I really do, having read close to 1,000 applications and done this just in the last 3 days for around 40 hours. I really do feel very strongly that the cohort we put together is strong. And yes, but I'll say in general, reappointment is not a guarantee ever. And in any case, but we do recognize the importance of the leadership that's currently in place. I know you know this because we've worked with CV9 very closely with this and other boards. We're trying the best we can to find that balance between bringing in new people, respecting the kind of visions of council members and what they want to do with their nominations, and maintaining some of the strong leadership of board members who are doing good things on those boards. It's not perfect, and it is certainly not a system that really responds well to rigid rules, which we kind of came in first trying to do, and doesn't really necessarily make all the sense. So it's not in defense of anything besides the fact that I will defend the total cohort that we have, but I think always open for more discussion on this, always open to trying to improve the system that we have, while also trying to go after getting new voices, people who are underrepresented, people who should have an opportunity to be at the table.
Yep, and nothing I said was meant to impugn the work of the staff or the borough president's office, but there are other players that have charter mandated roles in the community board applicant selection process besides the borough president. And I don't say this lightly in a public forum, because you can't have rigid rules about this, but there are certain norms that were established over 20 years or more in Manhattan that have made us some of the best and most representative community boards in the city, in my biased opinion. And so I just want to, I think it's important to call out when those norms appear to be being violated, because it's important to reinforce them. So I want to thank you and the staff of the borough president's office and the borough president again for your hard work and dedication to this process. It's really important. But I think that all the players involved in the process need to understand that, this is not something that is supposed to be explicitly political, but that's supposed to be done with an eye towards the community. And I am really excited about our cohort. I look forward to welcoming all of our new members and working with them.
With all due respect,
yeah.
we're at 2
Yep.
hours plus, Barry,
Happy
and I
to-
appreciate this, and I'm with you, but we've got to get through the rest of everybody's reports this morning.
Yep, happy to shut up. Thanks, folks.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. Xavier just wanted to make one more mention of something briefly. So Xavier, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And Jeffrey, I understand we all are trying to get on. I just wanted to acknowledge that the passing of previous Senator and Councilmember Bill Perkins is something I just attended last night, vigil and remembrance for him over at Adam Clayton Powell State Office Building. He was emblematic as a force in Harlem for advocating for the needs of the community and took the appointment process very seriously. So I just again wanted to acknowledge his passing and his remembrance, and thank you to everyone for your service and leaning in. So that'll be it. Thank you very much for acknowledging me, Trish, and everyone here.
Thanks. I think that Kathy is not here today for CB12, so we're going to go to CB1.
Thanks. I'll try and be as brief as I can, pending time. A thank you to Mayor Adams and Department of Transportation. May 24th, we'll have a restoration of a portion of the Brooklyn Bridge arches, returning that back to a public park. We are very, very grateful. It will help link CB1 and CB3 back together again, very important for us. Although at the same time, it's with sad and heavy heart that I am replying that the mayor's office has decided to not pursue an option for adaptive reuse for the borough-based jails in Manhattan, and to just do a full demo in a very, very sensitive site with sensitive buildings. And basically, after the garage collapse last month, we have concerns because we have so many historic buildings. It is really disconcerting for the community surrounding. Thank you again to Tricia and all the hard work from everyone. For our new board members, we're excited. We passed a resolution based on 501A, the enforcement of parking regulations. Citizen reporting is a really difficult topic that we don't agree on, citizen versus citizen. But what we do agree on is we cannot make change with placard parking in government vehicles that seem to be able to park wherever they want. So our resolution asks the city to use this to allow citizen reporting on government vehicles and placards, because we feel that perhaps having those kind of violations go to oath hearings, we may actually get progress, because certainly NYPD does not patrol themselves nor any other government parking issues. We also passed a resolution in support of theoretical for QUP, which is the open dining blueprint, to restore quality of life balance back into the open dining program. Separately, we also did a resolution on open dining seating capacity in our request to have those calculations included as part of the public restroom requirements for restaurants when they build out. We have several restaurants in Community Board 1 that were able to double their seating with the outside. This is no longer the same type of seating that the original outdoor sidewalk dining included. We have restaurants that have sidewalk dining and then have street bed dining on corners, have managed to double their use, and yet there's no doubling or commensurate of any kind of public restroom scaling up. And whether that scaling up is the high-end throne rooms or very high-end porta potties that people share on the streets, just getting more bathroom access for more people is critically important. I also wanted to ask the Borough President's Office if there was any follow-up by the Department of Transportation in response to a letter that was done last month requesting an extension in the public comment or more engagement. And two sort of very sad things, unfortunately, in Community Board 1 to say. 5 World Trade Center is proceeding along with no changes by the original deal for either the Port Authority or the developer in terms of kicking more money in for more affordable housing. We are a community that has lost thousands, and I mean thousands, of units. And while we laud the addition of 360 units, that will come with this project. It's a drop in the bucket for the almost 6,000 that we've lost in the rebuilding. And then lastly, we lost a board member this week, Bob Schneck. And if anybody wonders what the impact of one community board member, one advocate can be, he was the community liaison for Passive House and a huge proponent of that, and actually brought his advocacy work to New York City to be able to get that kind of belief that it is possible to build sustainably in New York. And with that, he actually was able, not in Community Board 1, sadly as it is, but he was integral to getting past the largest residential passive house project in North America, which is in East Harlem, and that is Sendero Verde. So as we talk about the links that we have on our community board between those in the north and those of us at the very tip, it really is just a vision to help everybody and move the city forward in a really positive manner. And that starts with the community boards and the people who work as public servants. So we will miss Bob, and thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. We'll go to Susan and CB2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for our new members. They couldn't have come at a more perfect time because we're already trying to get them into tonight's meeting. We're trying to get them up and running. And thank you for today's presentation by OCM. We are being, every time we turn around, there is another dispensary opening up. Some of these are incredibly well designed, as I had mentioned earlier. They are promoting themselves as dispensaries. And in addition to all of the deception, what they're doing is offering landlords rents that the legitimate businesses cannot compete with. And just the way we've had problems with so many liquor licenses, forcing out the range of local businesses that the community depends on. This is another pronged attack on the diversity of consumer services that, we hope that our communities, that they've historically enjoyed, but they're seeing less and less of. I just want to second what Tammy was talking about the outdoor seating, and we really do want to see those final rules. We're just swamped with these outdoor sheds, many of which are in poor quality. They are promoting the, vermin. They are being used as temporary shelters. They are causing safety issues. And, the sooner that we get those actual rules, the sooner we can start to assist in providing the specifics that make them appropriate for our neighborhoods. And that's often the difficulty that we face, is that one size fits all is never going to work when you're dealing with neighborhoods that large portions of which are historic. We had a presentation this month on the carbon neutrality, very much appreciated. Again, how is it going to work when you have all 19th century buildings, cobblestone streets, all the specifics? The devil will be in the details, where it's all comes down to the regulations. And the one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I want to ask this body, this relates to the 5G towers and that whole issue. We have received a number of requests from different individuals and groups about becoming consulting parties. I've even had members ask whether or not they could become consulting parties and represent CB2. I do not know if that is appropriate. I don't know what other people, what they've experienced, how much activity there is with regards to this. These Section 106 hearings that connect to historic districts that are eligible for designation, and whether or not people have come across this.
I have not heard that before, but happy to see if any of the other chairs have. I would probably recommend we tap in Tommy at some point just to see if there's any sort of strange conflict or something that we should be aware of. This is the first time I've heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, I have like somebody from our landmarks committee thinking that it would be appropriate for us to, for someone to have that status, but based on our legal status, whether or not that would be appropriate, because the other persons or groups that have been named as consulting parties are all private and local institutions. So I didn't want to take any steps until I got some guidance.
Yeah, I would say maybe it's worth touching base with Tommy offline. Tommy, unless you want to say something now about this.
No. Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's connect on that separately.
Okay, thank you. That's it. I want to make it fast.
Thanks, Susan. Jeffrey from CB4.
Hi, everybody. Just two quick things. Thank you to Vicky and CB2 Susan for co-sponsoring that mental health workshop. We're thankful for that. But more importantly, all of our eyes are on Pier 94, which is a deal going on with EDC and Vornado right now. They're in the final stages of negotiating a lease, and I will tell you, it is a terror. Not only did I have to sign up to review the 168-page lease in person, supervised for only 90 minutes, where I was only allowed to take handwritten notes, no pictures, no photocopies, no nothing. The terms of the lease are appalling. We're talking, if you know real estate, $3-4 a square foot for prime waterfront real estate that after 86 years will maximize at $13 a foot. We're talking $2.8 million maximum after 86 years with a lease term of 99 years on today's dollars, not tied to inflation. This is a total giveaway. I'm apoplectic. The lease validated the fact that I have been obsessed with this issue for a year. We got a really great piece in Cranes about it. We are not letting the heat off on this. We have an executive committee meeting on Monday where we'll be calling for a tabling of the lease and requesting a number of specific matters in the lease to either be struck or language changed. Just as an example for folks to be aware of, one of the public benefits they're proclaiming to provide to us, which are significant improvements to the greenway and the pedestrian area on the front of what is the head house, have been promised for the last 14 years. And in the lease, they are expressly excluded from the substantial completion and final completion checklist and are instead expected to be delivered in a, quote, good workman-like manner. And for 14 years, we've been waiting on this deliverable from the previous lease with EDC and Vornado. So we're hot on this. It is in the final stage of a public review after May 24th. Theoretically, there may be nothing else that can be done. So we're trying to change some things in this lease. We have no objection to the use, which is for a film studio. In fact, we welcome and applaud the use. It's all about the terms right now and to make sure we're not giving away city assets to developers like Vornado for a whole bunch of reasons. So also our conversations have kicked off and we are happy to be re-engaging with the Port Authority more formally as plans for that redevelopment continue. If anybody has EDC leases in their districts, I'm happy to talk about process or anything else on that offline. On the review, Barry, your question, this is driven by MOX, the Mayor's Office of Contract Services. Since it's a waterfront asset, SBS is the leaseholder and EDC is the negotiator. Even though we are allowed to visit, have all the rules changed under the mayor's executive orders and all the pandemic changes, oddly enough, I still had to sign up to go in person to EDC offices to review the lease for 90 minutes, supervised. And so I'm hoping for a daylight bill comes out of this because this is a public lease. So hoping for changes to the lease and other legislative efforts to make it easier to review public leases. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jeffrey, and thanks for your efforts on this. I'm sorry it's taken so much effort, but thank you. I see Kathy Diaz has joined us. Unless anybody has any questions for Jeffrey on this, I know there's a lot of chatting about this. Okay, oh, go ahead,
It would
Penny.
be great, Trisha. I apologize for jumping, but I agree with what Jeffrey has said. It would be actually great if that's a borough board thing, because it's rare in the years I've been attending this meeting or listening to this meeting that there has been someone who claims that there's been extraordinary transparency and, recusing from conflict of interest. Because the city primarily uses EDC as a contractor, it actually does cut the public out of the process and the transparency. I mean, I would love if a topic came up like this, or how we proceed forward to that kind of a conversation to get a little bit more balance back, but it's just me.
Okay, we'll take that in and try to see how we can have that conversation. Okay, I see Kathy Diaz has joined us, and she mentioned that she would like to give a report from CB12, so I want to give the floor over to Kathy.
All right, sorry, I had trouble unmuting. Thank you so much, Trish. Good morning, everyone. So over on CB12, lots been happening in the last month. I'll talk about some kind of project updates that we've received. I think at the last meeting I mentioned I think I was going to attend what was the final in-person session around the waterfront and Academy Street. And that was, I will say I was pleasantly surprised in that the entire, all the landscape architects, everyone who's super hands-on on that project was present at every single in-person session. And, Parks is generally really great about that, but sometimes, their corporate partners aren't always there. So that was really great to see and to hear the feedback and proposals of use of space. So I think our board, either next month we will hear, or likely after the fall, what the visions are and initial visions for the waterfront and Academy Street projects. Second to that is that on 211th Street, I want to say, I'm always terrible at placing the street, but 211th and 10th Ave, prior to or I would say in 2020, yeah, it was in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, that BRC, or Bowery, I think, Residence Committee, has the land essentially a plot that they're interested in building transitional housing in. At that time, if folks might have heard, because I think Mark at some point was involved. I know previously under Gail as well, there was a lot of activity in that the land itself, once they kind of were scoping and checking, it was known to be a burial ground for formerly enslaved peoples. And so they started a big kind of listening sessions. They brought in consultants from the burial ground downtown to be able to guide in terms of, how do we reconcile with this property. And so they're going to return next month to our Housing and Human Services Committee to give an update on the project itself. They're essentially ready to start construction this month. And obviously there was no conversations around the transitional housing piece, right? How many units, what populations, because they were really working to reconcile and figure out, what are we going to do and how are we going to have honor here. And so that piece or that component was resolved and presented. And so now we're ready to kind of hear the full scope of the project before they start construction. And again, this is on 213th Street, right by an elementary school, right by some of our nightlife. So, there are some kind of voices who are concerned, right, in terms of if we're right next to an elementary school, we're right by nightlife, what's the population, what are the hours, what are the services, things like that. And then the new piece that I learned about recently is for folks to know, our train stations up here are, we're the highest point. Most have elevators, and they're very deep elevators. Historically, and I'm not sure which other Manhattan stations also have had agents, MTA workers who would run the elevators. And over COVID, during COVID, that was of course phased out. And since then, we have not had a return of staffed elevators. And so we've learned recently that the MTA is looking to transition all of those workers. It's about 30 workers into other unknown roles across the MTA system. And so, so there's definitely going to be some activity moving on there. There will be some, I know, flyers that are going to be disseminated around that change. Because, of course, with some of those staff that have not been manning the elevators, if you would call it, or running the elevators, they have been sitting near the elevators, right? And just kind of like ensuring a flow, kind of just extra eyes and staff and support for folks who come into the station. And so that's a really big transition for not our stations that are used to having a staff presence. So there will definitely be more to update next month. And two things, I was able to make base with Civic Engagement Commission, and I'd love to kind of offline connect with some of you all in that, I didn't necessarily know the depth of the trainings or even some of the assessments that they were looking to do. So I know they're doing a language access assessment, which is something that comes up often on our board as a question. So definitely, any experiences you guys have with CEC, I would love to kind of learn more about it, and perhaps how we can all, during the summer break, think about what are some trainings that could be helpful for the boards, especially with new members coming on. And then I had mentioned, sorry, the last thing is around the service design studio. And I think I did send the link in the chat last month. I'll send it again. We're going to kick off a board members survey and a survey for community residents in terms of being able to bridge and better understand, what outreach looks like at the board and for board members, and what are the challenges, right, that residents have in accessing our meetings and participating in our meetings, or how they even see them as a value. And so we're all really excited. They're going to be at our first, hybrid general meeting, and presenting both survey links for folks. And our goal is that in June, we'll have some hybrid meetings, with some board members who are really active and, activate parts of our district into our meetings, and get that feedback. But I will leave it at that. That was my long speech, at least this month. If there's any questions, feel free to use the chat. So.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, guys, I think we're gonna, I know it's been a long one today. We're gonna just go, suffice to say, I think the VP is gonna unfortunately miss this one, but Keisha Sutton James, our Deputy Borough President, who has been able to be with us for the entirety of the meeting, just wanted to give us a couple more updates just on things to keep on your radar for the next month. Go ahead, Keisha.
Sorry, it took me a second to get the trackpad to work with me. Really, really quickly, just want to thank all of you and your entire boards, but all of you in particular for your patience in this reappointment process. Trisha and the entire team have worked really diligently to get you a fantastic bumper crop, as I think Susan said, which I thought was awesome. Of course, there were a lot of really tough decisions to be made on every board, but we're really, really, really excited, frankly, about the new cohort. Wanted to note that we are getting out the full roster to each of you today. And as Trisha mentioned earlier, we'll be doing our community board onboarding sessions in the first 2 weeks of June. Also, switching topics, wanted to just highlight some changes to our website. Hope that you guys will all be checking it out. We have a new website. It's fantabulous. But there are, which I hope you have visited it in the last few months, but there are new ways to engage with the office through the site. You can identify housing sites, which, as you I'm sure all know, after we released the housing plan, we started to get a lot of feedback from community members saying, oh, I have a site. So now you can identify housing sites. can submit community events for our community calendar, and of course, give us feedback on emerging policy discussions like AI. And then finally, switching topics one more time, we have a couple of very important events coming up on Friday. In partnership with Assemblymember Grace Lee, we are doing our AAPI event this Friday. I was just looking for the link for it to put that in the chat, so I'll try to pull that up really quickly. And then, of course, you all know that we're having our housing lottery, the Housing Connect workshop in CB10 at the Kennedy Center on, I think it's Wednesday the Wednesday the 24th. We're really excited about that as well. It will be the first in our Manhattan Empowerment series that we will be doing, essentially trying to bring our constituent services out into the community and do workshops around the borough. So we're looking forward to that next Wednesday. And finally, I want to share condolences around the loss of Bob downtown, and of course of Senator Perkins uptown. Both served valiantly. The loss of course, Senator / Council Member Perkins has been huge uptown, and it sounds like the impact of Bob downtown has been just as substantial. So thank you for sharing, Tammy. And that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful month.
Thanks, Keisha.
Sure.
Okay, I think with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. We'll see you guys in June. Be ready to talk about carbon neutrality. Bye.
Thank you.